How does a bishop who preached only peace and unity become so hated that his own people murder him in cold blood? What kind of love for the church drives a man to risk and lose his life trying to heal a wound no one else wanted healed? Why did Josaphat's violent death accomplish what his passionate life could not? Beginning the slow, painful reconciliation between Eastern and Western Christianity? This is the story of Saint Josaphat Kuntsevich, the bishop caught between two worlds who discovered that sometimes the price of unity is your own blood, and that the seeds of reconciliation are watered with martyrdom. Have we forgotten those who died not for conquest, but for communion? As the story opens in a small Ruthenian town, a child kneels beneath candlelight, dreaming of peace the world refused to keep. Join me to trace his path. Hit like and subscribe for more journeys into faith, division, and the hidden courage that shaped history. The year was 1595, and a seismic event was unfolding. In Ruthenia, what we now call Ukraine and Belarus, some Eastern bishops signed the Union of Brest after years of painful negotiation. Their choice: restore communion with Rome while preserving their Byzantine liturgy, their married clergy, and their ancient Slavic traditions. They would accept papal authority while keeping the divine liturgy in Church Slavonic, maintaining the mystical theology of the East. The Greek Catholic Church, sometimes called Uniate, was born. The Orthodox reaction was immediate and furious. To many faithful, this felt like betrayal. For 500 years since the Great Schism, East and West had walked separate paths. Now, to restore communion with Rome, even while keeping Eastern practices, seemed like capitulation to Latin power. They feared forced Latinization, the erasure of Slavic culture, and submission to Polish political pressure wrapped in Catholic cloth. Churches were seized overnight. The clergy were attacked. Families are split down the middle. The single Ruthenian church became two warring factions, each claiming to be the true heir of apostolic tradition. The Orthodox reaction was immediate and furious. To many faithful, this felt like betrayal. For 500 years since the Great Schism, East and West had walked separate paths. Now, to restore communion with Rome, even while keeping Eastern practices, seemed like capitulation to Latin power. They feared forced Latinization, the erasure of Slavic culture, and submission to Polish political pressure wrapped in Catholic cloth. Churches were seized overnight. The clergy were attacked. Families are split down the middle. The single Ruthenian church became two warring factions, each claiming to be the true heir of apostolic tradition. But he also watched that world tear itself apart. Neighbors who once worshipped together now refused to speak. Whispers of violence echoed through the streets. Accusations of heresy flew between those who had once been brothers. He witnessed the pain in his parents' eyes as they tried to navigate the impossible choice the Union had forced upon every Ruthenian Christian. Yet something stirred in young John's heart, not a longing for one side to triumph, but for the wound itself to heal, a hunger for unity that transcended politics and pride. Into this battlefield of faith, the young merchant's son was about to step, not as a warrior, but as a peacemaker. He could not yet know that his life would become a bridge thrown across this chasm, or that the bridge would be built from his own bones. At 20, John had everything: success in Vilnius's merchant trade, family expectations of marriage, and wealth. But every morning, monastery bells called to something deeper in his heart. In 1600, he made his choice. He walked from the merchant stalls into the Trinity Monastery gates. The Basilian monks, Byzantine Rite monastics who accepted the union, received him joyfully. He took the name Josaphat. Monastic formation transformed him. Rising before dawn for the divine office. Long prayer before icons. Deep study of both Eastern and Western fathers, Basil and Chrysostom, but also Augustine and Aquinas. Something remarkable happened. He began seeing East and West not as contradictory, but complementary. Two lungs, breathing in one body. The union, he believed, wasn't betrayal, but healing. In 1609, an ordained priest, he felt his calling's weight. He would honor both traditions, defending married clergy and Slavonic liturgy against Latin pressure, but also resisting Orthodox claims that Rome meant betrayal. He became a lightning rod. Orthodox called him a traitor. Some Latins wanted him more Roman. But Josaphat held his ground, fully Eastern, fully Catholic. The path ahead was dangerous, but he walked it willingly. In 1617, at 37, Josaphat was consecrated Archbishop of Polotsk. He inherited a diocese, torn by division, parishes refusing his authority, clergy seeing him as an interloper, and regions where violence over the union was constant. But he saw souls needing a shepherd. With characteristic intensity, he threw himself into reform. He traveled constantly, often on foot, sleeping in peasant huts. He established schools, founded monasteries, preached fiery sermons about unity, holy priests, and reverent liturgy. His reforms were desperately needed but bitterly resented. Clergy resented higher standards. Property reclamation created accusations of greed. His Eucharistic devotion seemed too Catholic to some Orthodox. With every reform, opposition grew. A rival Orthodox bishop was appointed, creating competing hierarchies. Inflammatory pamphlets accused Josaphat of betraying Slavic tradition, being a Polish puppet. Rumors spread that Rome paid him to force conversions. The rhetoric grew violent. Friends urged caution, but Josaphat couldn't be silent. "If they kill me," he told brother bishops, "perhaps my blood will accomplish what my words could not." The question was no longer if violence would come, but when. Autumn, year 1623. Vitebsk was in turmoil. Orthodox priest Ilya preached inflammatory sermons against Josaphat. Advisors pleaded, "They want to kill you. Stay away." But Josaphat decided to go. Vitebsk was his flock. A shepherd doesn't abandon sheep when wolves approach. The journey had Calvary's quality. Roads muddy with rain, sky gray. But Josaphat's face was peaceful. He spoke of loving even those who opposed him. "If violence comes, we must not respond in kind. We must forgive." Arriving on the 10th of November, and tension was palpable. Men gathered in the streets with hostile eyes. Father Ilya's preaching grew explicit. Josaphat deserved no mercy. City authorities did nothing. On the evening of November 11th, the spark came. One of Josaphat's servants was recognized and surrounded. He fled back to their residence. The mob followed. Word spread. The hated bishop was trapped. Crowds gathered. Torches lit. Axes and clubs appeared. Inside, Josaphat knelt before his icon and prayed. His companions were terrified. When he rose, his face was radiant. "Do not be afraid. If they want me, I will go. But you, stay safe. Do not defend me. This is the Lord's will." He walked to the door. One priest begged him not to go. Josaphat freed himself gently. The Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Then he opened the door and stepped into the torchlight. On the 12th of November, year 1623, morning broke cold and gray over Vitebsk. Josaphat survived the night, but the mob's mood hadn't improved. If anything, rage intensified. More people joined the crowd outside. Shouts were no longer just angry, they were murderous. "Death to the traitor! Kill the false bishop!" The city seemed to have lost any pretense of order or justice. The air itself felt heavy with violence, thick with hatred years in the making. Josaphat stood at a window, looking down at faces twisted with fury. Some he had baptized, anointing their foreheads with holy chrism when they were infants. Some he had blessed at their weddings, joining their hands and praying for their future. Some he had comforted at their loved ones' graves, speaking words of resurrection hope. Now they wanted him dead. He felt no anger toward them, only deep sorrow. They had been manipulated, their legitimate fears twisted into rage by those who cared more about power than truth. If his death could somehow break through that rage, somehow plant Peace's seed in soil soaked with bitterness, then let it come. Now they wanted him dead. He felt no anger toward them, only deep sorrow. They had been manipulated, their legitimate fears twisted into rage by those who cared more about power than truth. If his death could somehow break through that rage, somehow plant Peace's seed in soil soaked with bitterness, then let it come. Around midday, the mob broke into the building. They surged through doors like a flood. Josaphat's companions scattered in terror, hiding in corners, praying desperately. But the archbishop remained in the chapel, kneeling before Christ's icon, his hands folded, his lips moving in prayer. The mob found him there, defenseless, praying. For a brief moment, the violence wave seemed to pause, as if even in their fury they recognized the strangeness of what they were about to do, murdering a bishop at prayer, a shepherd kneeling before his Lord. Then someone shouted, and the moment broke like glass. They rushed at him. Blows came from all sides, clubs, fists, and feet. Josaphat didn't raise his hands to defend himself. Instead, as they dragged him from the chapel, he was heard to say, "My children, what are you doing? If you have something against me, here I am, but hurt no one else." The words echoed Christ's own in Gethsemane. They hauled him into the courtyard. The beating continued, savage and merciless, without pity or pause. Then someone produced an axe. The final blow came quickly. The Bishop of Polotsk, the man who had walked knowingly into martyrdom, fell to the ground. His blood stained the courtyard stones. When it was over and rage burned itself out, they realized what they had done. Some stood in shock, hands trembling. Others, still caught in frenzy's grip, desecrated the body, dragging it through the streets, finally throwing it into the Dvina River's cold waters. "Let the traitor float away," someone spat. "Let the fish have him." They thought that was the end of the story. They thought violence would be the final word. But according to quickly spreading accounts, something strange happened. The body, though weighted down with stones, rose to the surface and floated upright, surrounded by soft radiance. Fishermen saw it and made the sign of the cross in fear, whispering prayers. Word reached the city. Some said it was heaven's sign. Others called it superstition, tricks of light on water. But no one could deny what happened next. The body was recovered with reverence, and even in death, Josaphat's face was peaceful, almost luminous, bearing no trace of the hatred that had killed him. They buried him quietly, afraid of both sides now, afraid of Orthodox mobs and Catholic revenge. But the grave couldn't contain his influence. Almost immediately, miracle reports began spreading. The sick healed when they prayed at his tomb. Those who participated in the murder were tormented by guilt. Some repented publicly, weeping for what they'd done, begging forgiveness. And slowly, painfully, the narrative began changing. Perhaps this bishop hadn't been a tyrant or traitor. Perhaps he had been something else entirely. Perhaps they had killed a saint. The martyr's blood fell on divided church soil. Now, it was time to see what would grow. "20 years, from murder to beatification, lightning speed in church history. The evidence was undeniable. Miracles, conversions of murderers, and shock that led to self-reflection. The man killed while alive was recognized as holy in death. Orthodox establishment initially resisted, but ordinary people remembered his charity, his love for Eastern tradition. Slowly, some admitted, perhaps he'd been sincere. In 1867, Pope Pius IX canonized Josaphat, the first Eastern Catholic saint so honored. The canonization itself was a statement. Holiness flourishes in Eastern tradition. He was declared patron of Christian unity. The 20th century vindicated his vision. Vatican II embraced a new language. Orthodox as sister churches. Pope John Paul II spoke of the church breathing with two lungs, east and west. This was Josaphat's vision in modern words. The Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church survived Soviet persecution. Today, millions celebrate divine liturgy in Slavonic. Married priests serve. Byzantine traditions flourish, all in communion with Rome. This is Josaphat's sacrifice bearing fruit. Yet full unity remains unrealized. Josaphat remains controversial. But he was a bridge builder willing to pay the ultimate price for his conviction that Christ's church should be one. His relics rest in street Peters, but his presence lives most powerfully in small Ukrainian and Belarusian churches, where Byzantine Catholics sing the liturgy he loved, pray for the unity he died promoting. Every Catholic Orthodox dialogue, every moment when Christians choose reconciliation over revenge, Josaphat's harvest continues growing. Saint Josaphat died at 43, murdered, his body thrown into a river. By earthly measure, his mission failed. The union remained contested. Divisions deepened. Unity seemed further away. But 400 years later, we see what he couldn't. Martyrs plant seeds that take centuries to germinate, and reconciliation's slow work is watered by the blood of those willing to die for peace. His life asks uncomfortable questions. When do we choose unity over tribal loyalty? When is compromise, faithfulness versus betrayal? How do we love our tradition without making it an idol? These aren't abstract puzzles. They're lived questions. For anyone caught between communities, anyone who's discovered that sometimes the most Christian act is refusing to choose sides when both claim to speak for God. Josaphat shows us that peacemakers aren't naive optimists. They're people who see differences clearly, but believe unity is worth pursuing anyway, even when it costs everything. They're bridge builders who know they might be crushed by the bridge they're constructing. The harvest is still growing. Full unity hasn't arrived. But every Catholic Orthodox dialogue, every joint prayer, every moment Christians choose reconciliation over revenge, these are seeds from where his blood fell.